2 years into exile, humanity had achieved what many thought impossible. Admiral Nicole Johnson stood in the command center of New Geneva, watching real-time displays of human territory that now spanned 47 star systems. The ancient network had become the backbone of a civilization that surpassed anything in known galactic history. The colony on New Geneva had grown into a model city housing 8 million people. Governor Paul Anderson reviewed daily reports showing unprecedented prosperity. Crime rates were virtually zero, unemployment did not exist, and every citizen had access to advanced medical care and education. The population growth rate is remarkable. Paul told his administrative staff, "We are adding 50,000 new colonists every month as exploration teams discover new habitable worlds." Engineer Amy Watson had revolutionized human technology by successfully integrating ancient alien systems with human innovation. Her latest creation was a propulsion system that allowed ships to travel between galaxies in mere weeks. "We are no longer limited to this galaxy," Amy explained to the Engineering Council. "The ancient network includes gates that connect to 3 other galaxies. Our ancestors could only dream of such expansion possibilities." Dr. Kevin Smith's research teams had made breakthroughs that redefined scientific understanding. Human scientists, freed from council restrictions on dangerous experiments, pushed the boundaries of knowledge at an unprecedented pace. "We have successfully created artificial gravity generators that require no rotating systems," Kevin reported to Admiral Johnson. "Our space habitats can now be built as large as planets while maintaining perfect Earth-normal conditions." The military advantages were equally impressive. General Chris Evans commanded a fleet that used hybrid technology far beyond Council capabilities. Human warships could now operate in conditions that would destroy any Council vessel. "Our defensive grid protects 47 star systems simultaneously," Chris explained during a strategy meeting. "Any hostile force would face energy weapons that can destroy targets across multiple light years instantly." Captain Greg Miller continued discovering new worlds rich in resources unknown to Council science. His exploration teams had found planets containing materials that revolutionized manufacturing, energy production, and medical treatment. "We have discovered elements that do not exist in Council space," Greg reported from the Omega sector. "These materials allow us to build technology that Council species cannot even imagine." The ancient network revealed more secrets daily. Dr. Rachel Martinez had decoded historical records showing the fate of the original builders. They had not disappeared through war or disaster. They had evolved beyond physical existence, becoming pure energy beings who transcended normal space and time. "The technology we are using represents only the most basic level of their achievements," Rachel explained to fascinated colleagues. "If we continue advancing at our current rate, we could eventually follow the same evolutionary path." Human alliances with non-Council species strengthened dramatically. The Valdarin had integrated their underwater cities with human orbital habitats, creating hybrid communities that benefited both species. The Synthons shared manufacturing techniques that increased human production efficiency by 500%. Most significantly, the Eternals offered humanity membership in what they called the Transcendent Alliance, a coalition of species that had surpassed normal galactic limitations. "Your species shows potential we have rarely observed," Guide explained to Admiral Kate Sullivan. "Most civilizations take millions of years to achieve what humans have accomplished in decades." Kate felt humbled by the offer. "What would membership in this alliance mean for humanity?" "Access to knowledge accumulated over billions of years," Guide replied. "Technology that allows travel between dimensions. Understanding of cosmic forces that shape reality itself." Meanwhile, Council space continued its downward spiral. The Zephyrian-Alterian War had spread to 20 star systems with casualties mounting into the millions. Without human peacekeepers and mediators, conflicts that had been contained for decades exploded into full-scale warfare. Chancellor Vextar convened emergency sessions almost daily, but the Council's authority was crumbling. Species that had supported human expulsion now blamed the leadership for the resulting chaos. The Viridian agricultural crisis had become a humanitarian disaster. 12 worlds faced complete famine as crop failures spread across entire continents. Government officials who had voted for human expulsion were overthrown by starving populations demanding action. "We need human agricultural specialists immediately," declared the new Viridian Prime Minister during a heated council session. "Our people are dying while you debate politics." The Therian economic collapse accelerated as more corporations filed for bankruptcy. Industrial worlds that had depended on human efficiency experts now operated at 30% capacity. Unemployment reached levels not seen in centuries. "The human evacuation has cost our economy more than any war in our history," reported the Therian Commerce Minister. "We are facing complete economic collapse within months." Military disasters mounted as council forces proved incapable of maintaining order without human tactical expertise. The Corlin raiders had returned in greater numbers, attacking shipping lanes with impunity. Without human patrol fleets, piracy increased by 400%. "Our military commanders lacked the strategic thinking that human advisors provided," admitted General Pachter of the Zelkin Defense Force. "We are losing battles we should easily win." The medical situation became catastrophic when the Proximan plague mutated into 3 new strains. Without human research teams to develop treatments, the death toll reached 10 million people across 8-star systems. "We are witnessing the collapse of our medical infrastructure," reported Dr. Velmer of the Council Health Committee. "Diseases we controlled for decades are now killing millions." Communication networks optimized by human technicians began experiencing system-wide failures. Without proper maintenance, data transmission between worlds became unreliable. Some sectors lost contact completely, leaving entire populations isolated. "The humans built systems we do not fully understand," admitted Chief Engineer Kalsith of the Therian Technical Division. "We are discovering critical components we never knew existed." Trade routes carefully planned by human logistics experts became inefficient and dangerous. Shipping costs increased by 200% as vessels took longer paths to avoid pirate-infested areas. Many trade agreements collapsed as species could no longer fulfill their obligations. "Human trade algorithms saved us billions of credits annually," revealed the Rigel Union Commerce Secretary. "Without them, interstellar trade is becoming economically unfeasible." Individual council members began privately questioning the wisdom of the expulsion decision. The Meridian Republic sent secret envoys to the Outer Rim, hoping to establish communication with human settlements. They found only automated warning systems telling them to leave immediately. The Court Mining Consortium offered enormous bribes to any intermediary who could contact human engineers. Their mining operations on 6 worlds had failed completely without human technical expertise. "We will pay any price for human knowledge," declared Consortium Director Mailvar. "Our entire civilization depends on mining technology we cannot operate alone," but humanity had moved far beyond council reach. Human settlements in the ancient network were protected by defensive systems that made them invisible to council sensors. Any unauthorized ships approaching human territory were detected days before arrival and politely but firmly turned away. Corporate executives who had initially supported human expulsion now faced personal financial ruin. Companies that had profited from human innovations for decades discovered they could not maintain their advantages without continued human involvement. "We took human expertise for granted," admitted former Therian Corporation President Jalwar. "We assumed other species could easily replace their contributions. We were catastrophically wrong." As the second year of exile ended, the council faced a harsh reality. They had not removed a threat to galactic stability. They had expelled the species that provided galactic stability. Economic projections showed complete council collapse within 3 years. Military analysts predicted widespread warfare as species fought over diminishing resources. Medical experts warned of pandemic diseases that could kill billions without human research capabilities. Chancellor Vextar privately admitted to his closest advisors what many had begun to suspect. We may have destroyed galactic civilization to protect it from human influence, he said quietly. The cure has proven far worse than the disease. But political pride prevented the Council from acknowledging their mistake publicly. They had justified human expulsion as necessary for galactic peace and prosperity. Now they faced war and poverty. Without the very people who could save them in the depths of space, humanity continued its remarkable transformation, unaware that their former oppressors were finally beginning to understand the true cost of their fear and prejudice. Jake Morrison sat in his small scout ship, watching the dark space around him. His hands moved slowly over the controls as he checked the readings on his screen. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. He had been out here for 3 weeks, hiding in the asteroid field and watching the alien ships move back and forth. The Zephyrians had been pushing closer to human space every day. Their big ships moved in patterns that Jake had been learning. He wrote down their routes and the times they changed guards. His job was simple: watch and report back to Earth Command. Nobody was supposed to know he was here. Jake looked at his coffee cup. It was empty again. He had been drinking too much coffee lately, but it helped him stay awake during the long hours. The asteroids around him provided good cover. His ship's stealth systems made it almost impossible to detect, or so he thought. He pulled up the star map on his main screen. The human colonies were marked in blue dots, scattered across this part of space. The red dots showed where the Zephyrian ships had been spotted. Each day, the red dots moved closer to the blue ones. That was why Jake was here. The radio crackled with alien voices speaking in their strange language. Jake had learned to recognize some of their words during his weeks of listening. They talked about expansion, about weak species, about claiming new territory. They never mentioned humans by name, but Jake knew they were talking about his people. A small alarm beeped on his console. Jake looked down and saw a new contact on his sensors. Another Zephyrian patrol ship was coming this way. He watched it move between the asteroids, just like the others had done before. Jake made a note of the time and direction. The alien ship passed by without stopping. Jake let out a small breath he didn't know he was holding. He had gotten used to these close calls over the past few weeks. The aliens never seemed to notice his small ship hiding among the rocks. Jake thought about home while he waited. His father would be worried about him by now. Admiral Carl Morrison always worried when his son went on long missions. Jake had promised to check in every few days, but maintaining radio silence was more important than family calls. The communication system beeped softly. Jake looked at the incoming message. It was from Earth Command asking for his latest report. He began typing his response, listing the ship movements he had observed and the patrol schedules he had figured out. As he typed, Jake noticed something strange on his sensors. The readings showed empty space behind him, just like always. But something felt wrong. He had learned to trust his feelings during his years as a pilot. His training had taught him that sometimes the instruments could be fooled. Jake finished his report and prepared to send it. His finger moved toward the transmission button when his worst fears came true. The space behind him shimmered like water, and a massive Zephyrian dreadnought appeared out of nowhere. The ship was 10 times bigger than his own, covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. Oh no, Jake said to himself. His hands flew over the controls, trying to start the engines and activate his escape systems, but it was too late. The alien ship fired some kind of energy beam that made all of Jake's instruments go dark. The lights went out. The engine stopped humming. Even his coffee maker stopped working. Jake sat in the darkness, listening to his own breathing. Emergency power kicked in after a few seconds, giving him dim red lighting and basic life support. Through his front window, Jake could see the huge alien ship moving closer. It was dark gray with strange symbols painted on its hull. Smaller ships were coming out of it, heading straight for Jake's position. He knew these were boarding craft. Jake reached for his sidearm and checked the charge. It was a small weapon, designed more for emergencies than real fighting. Against the Zephyrians, it would be almost useless. But Jake was a human, and humans didn't give up without a fight. He quickly activated his emergency beacon. The small device would broadcast his location and status to any human ships in the area. The problem was that no human ships were supposed to be in this area. Jake was on his own. The first boarding craft attached itself to his ship's airlock with a loud clang. Jake could hear the aliens cutting through his hull. He backed away from the airlock door and raised his weapon. His heart was beating fast, but his hands were steady. The door exploded inward with a shower of sparks. Smoke filled the small cabin. Through the smoke came the Zephyrians, tall, insect-like creatures with 4 arms and hard shells covering their bodies. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Jake fired his pistol 3 times. The energy bolts hit the first alien in the chest, but barely scratched its natural armor. The creature looked down at the scorch marks and made a sound that might have been laughter. 2 more aliens came through the door. Jake tried to run toward the back of his ship, but there was nowhere to go. One of the creatures grabbed him with 2 of its arms. Jake tried to fight back, but the alien was much stronger than any human. "Let me go," Jake shouted, but the aliens didn't seem to understand English. They dragged him toward their boarding craft. Jake got one last look at his ship before they pulled him inside their vessel. The alien ship was hot and humid. The air smelled like metal and something Jake couldn't identify. The corridors were built for creatures much taller than humans. Jake had to be carried because he couldn't keep up with their long strides. They brought him to a room where another alien was waiting. This one wore different markings on its shell and seemed to be in charge. It looked at Jake the way a scientist might look at an interesting bug. The alien leader spoke in its own language to the others. Jake couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. They thought he was nothing special. Just another weak creature from a weak species. Jake was pushed into a small cell. The door sealed shut with a hiss. He was alone again, but this time he was a prisoner on an alien warship. As he sat on the metal floor, Jake began planning his next move. Being captured was bad, but giving up hope was worse. The emergency beacon was still working somewhere on his ship. Jake had to believe that someone would notice his signal. He had to believe that help was coming, because if no one was looking for him, Jake Morrison was going to die very far from home. Jake woke up on a cold metal floor. His head hurt, and his mouth was dry. The cell around him was much bigger than it needed to be for someone his size. The walls were made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. A small slot near the bottom of one wall probably dispensed food. He sat up slowly and looked around. The ceiling was at least 12 feet high. Everything in the room was built for creatures much larger than humans. Jake felt like a child in an adult's bedroom. That was probably exactly how the aliens saw him. A soft hum came from somewhere in the walls. Jake guessed it was the life support system keeping him alive. The air was thick and warm, not quite right for human lungs, but breathable. His captors wanted him alive, which was both good and bad news. The door to his cell had no handle on the inside. Jake ran his hands along its edges, looking for any weakness. The metal was smooth and seamless. Whatever technology sealed it was. Beyond anything he could break with his bare hands, hours passed before anything happened. Jake did push-ups and sit-ups to keep his blood moving. He examined every inch of his cell, memorizing details that might be useful later. The slot in the wall dispensed a gray paste that tasted like wet cardboard but filled his stomach. Finally, the door opened with a hiss. 2 alien guards entered, followed by a third that wore different markings. This one was slightly smaller than the others and carried what looked like a medical scanner. "You are awake," the smaller alien said in broken English. Its voice was rough and high-pitched. "I am Dr. Keshlix. I study your kind." Jake said nothing. His military training had taught him to reveal as little as possible to captors. But part of him was curious about how the alien had learned to speak his language. "We intercepted your communications," Dr. Keshlix continued. "Your language is simple, primitive, like your bodies." She activated her scanner and pointed it at Jake. "You have no natural armor, no claws, no venom. How did your species survive long enough to reach space?" "We're tougher than we look," Jake said. Dr. Keshlix made a sound that might have been laughter. "I doubt that. Your bone density is low." Your muscle mass is inadequate. You require specific atmospheric conditions to survive. You are barely more evolved than the small mammals on our homeworld. She moved closer with her scanner. Jake could see her face more clearly now. Like the other aliens, she had large, compound eyes and mandibles that clicked when she spoke. Her shell was a lighter color than the guards, marked with symbols that probably indicated her rank or profession. "Hold still," she commanded. The scanner beam passed over Jake's body. He felt a tingling sensation wherever it touched. "Fascinating. Your heart rate increased when I approached. Your body produces stress chemicals. You are afraid." "Wouldn't you be?" Jake asked. "Fear is weakness," Dr. Keshlix replied. "The strong have nothing to fear from the weak. You humans live in constant terror because you know how fragile you are." Jake wanted to argue, but he kept quiet. Let the alien think humans were weak and scared. It might give him an advantage. Later, the doctor continued her scans, making notes on a device that looked like a crystal tablet. She seemed particularly interested in Jake's joints and muscle attachments. "Your skeletal structure is inefficient. Too many small bones that can break easily. And your skin, it provides no protection at all?" "It works fine for us," Jake said. "Only because you hide behind technology," Dr. Keshlik said. "Remove your machines and weapons, and humans become helpless prey. That is why we captured you." So easily, the guards stood silently by the door, watching Jake with their multiple eyes. They held weapons that hummed with stored energy. Jake could tell they expected no trouble from him. To them, he was just another weak specimen. "Why are you studying me?" Jake asked. "Captain Vexstar wants to understand human weaknesses," the doctor explained. "When we attack your colonies, we need to know how to break your will to fight. Pain, tolerance, psychological pressure points, social structures. Your body will teach us how to defeat your entire species." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The aliens weren't just expanding into human space, they were planning a full invasion. Every answer he gave could help them hurt his people. "I won't help you," he said. Dr. Keshlix clicked her mandibles in what Jake was learning meant amusement. "You have no choice. Your body will give us the information whether you cooperate or not. Blood samples, tissue analysis, brain scans. We will learn everything we need to know." She activated another device that looked like a needle with a crystal tip. "This will extract samples for genetic analysis. Try not to move. It will only hurt more if you struggle." Jake tensed his muscles, preparing to fight even though he knew it was hopeless. But before the doctor could move closer, an alarm started blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside Jake's cell. The guards immediately became alert. Speaking rapidly in their own language, Dr. Keshlix put away her medical tools and replied to them with what sounded like orders. "What's happening?" Jake asked. "Nothing that concerns you," the doctor said, but Jake could hear uncertainty in her voice. The alarm continued for several minutes before stopping. One of the guards spoke to Dr. Keshlix. She listened and made an angry clicking sound. "We will continue this later," she told Jake. "Do not think this delay means anything. You are still our prisoner." They left Jake alone in his cell. The door sealed shut again with its electronic hiss. But something had changed. The guards had seemed nervous. Dr. Keshlix had been upset about something. Jake lay down on the floor and tried to think. The alarm might mean many things. Engine problems, asteroid collision, maybe another ship nearby. He hoped it was the last option, but he couldn't count on rescue. He had to assume he was on his own. The alien doctor had revealed important information during her visit. The Zephyrians were planning to attack human colonies. They saw humans as weak and inferior. Most importantly, they were studying Jake to learn how to fight his entire species. Jake began planning how to escape, or at least get a message to warn Earth. The emergency beacon on his ship might still be working. If he could get back to it, or access the alien ship's communication system, he might be able to send a warning. The food slot dispensed another serving of gray paste. Jake ate it slowly, thinking about the doctor's words. She was wrong about humans being weak, but her mistake might be useful. If the aliens underestimated humanity, they might not prepare properly for a real fight. Jake had seen overconfident enemies before. They made mistakes that careful opponents never would. The Zephyrians thought they had captured a helpless scout from a primitive species. They had no idea what humans were really capable of when pushed too far. The lights in his cell dimmed, probably indicating night cycle on the alien ship. Jake closed his eyes but didn't sleep. He listened to the sounds of the ship around him, the hum of engines, the click of alien feet in corridors, the whisper of air through ventilation systems. Somewhere out there, Dr. Keshlix was probably analyzing the scans she had taken. She would learn about human biology, but she wouldn't understand human determination. She would see Jake's physical weaknesses but miss his mental strengths. That blindness might be the only advantage Jake had. He would need to use it carefully. Days passed in the alien cell. Jake lost count after the first week. The gray paste came 3 times each day cycle, and the lights dimmed once every 24 hours. He used these rhythms to mark time and keep his mind sharp. The guards came to get him regularly for more sessions with Dr. Keshlix. Each time, Jake pretended to be weaker than he was. He slumped his shoulders, moved slowly, and spoke in a tired voice. The aliens seemed to expect this behavior from their prisoner. "You are deteriorating faster than expected," Dr. Keshlix noted during one examination. "Human resilience is even lower than our initial estimates." Jake coughed weakly. "I need better food and more water." "Your species is too dependent on specific nutrients," the doctor replied. "This confirms our analysis that humans cannot survive long away from their home environment." She was wrong, but Jake didn't correct her. In reality, he was adapting to the alien food and the ship's atmosphere better than expected. His military training had included survival in hostile environments. But letting the Zephyrians think he was failing served his purposes. Between the medical sessions, Jake observed everything he could about the ship. The corridors were wide and tall, with junction points every 50 meters. Emergency lighting strips ran along the floor. The walls had access panels marked with alien symbols that probably led to maintenance areas. Most importantly, Jake learned the guard schedules. The shift changes happened every 8 hours. During the changeover, there was always a 5-minute gap when fewer guards patrolled the prison level. Jake filed this information away for future use. He also studied the guards themselves. Most were young Zephyrians who seemed bored by prisoner duty. They talked among themselves in their clicking language, sometimes forgetting that Jake might be listening. One guard in particular, who Jake privately named Chatty, seemed more curious about humans than the others. "Your ship was very small," Chatty said one day in broken English. "Where are your weapons?" Jake looked up from his position on the floor. "What weapons?" "All ships have weapons," Chatty insisted. "How do you fight other ships?" "We don't fight," Jake lied. "Humans are peaceful. We just explore and trade." Chatty clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "No weapons? Then why do other clans fear you?" This was interesting. Jake tried to keep his expression neutral. "Other clans fear us?" "The Rethmer clan says humans destroyed one of their raiding fleets," Chatty explained. "But if you have no weapons, how is this possible?" Jake shrugged. "Maybe they made a mistake. Maybe it wasn't humans who destroyed their ships." But privately, Jake was excited. The Rethmar incident had happened 6 months ago near the Centauri system. A human defense fleet had indeed destroyed alien raiders who were attacking civilian transports. If word was spreading among different alien species, it meant humans were gaining a reputation. Dr. Keshlix arrived for another session, interrupting Jake's conversation with Chatty. The guard immediately went back to his post, but Jake had learned something valuable. The aliens weren't sharing all their information with each other. "Today we will test your pain tolerance," Dr. Keshlix announced. She carried a new device that looked like a metal rod with wires attached. "That's against the laws of war," Jake protested. "Your laws mean nothing here," the doctor replied. "Besides, this is scientific research, not torture. We need to understand human nerve responses." The device sent electric shocks through Jake's body. He gritted his teeth and tried not to scream. The pain was intense, but he had endured worse during military training. Jake focused on his breathing and let his mind drift away from his body. "Remarkable," Dr. Keshlix muttered. "Your stress hormones are elevated, but you're not vocalizing distress. Most species would be crying for mercy by now." She increased the intensity. Jake's muscles spasmed, but he kept quiet. After what felt like hours, the doctor finally stopped. "Your pain tolerance is higher than expected," she admitted. "But this changes nothing. Pain is just one factor in breaking a species' will to fight." After she left, Jake lay on the floor and let his body recover. The torture session had actually given him useful information. The aliens expected their enemies to break easily under pressure. They didn't understand that humans had been dealing with pain and hardship for thousands of years. That night, Jake noticed something different about the ship's routine. Instead of the usual quiet hum, he could hear more activity in the corridors. Footsteps moved faster. Voices spoke with more urgency. Something was happening. He pressed his ear to the door and listened carefully. The alien language was still mostly meaningless to him, but he caught a few words that Chatty had taught him. Ship was one, human was another. And what sounded like many, Jake's heart rate increased. Were there human ships nearby? Had someone detected his emergency beacon? He tried not to get his hopes up, but the increased activity suggested the Zephyrians were concerned about something. The next morning, Captain Vexstar himself came to visit Jake's cell. The alien commander was larger than the others, with darker shell markings and scars across his exoskeleton. He studied Jake with obvious contempt. "You are Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison," the captain said in perfect English. His accent was much cleaner than Dr. Keshlix's rough pronunciation. Jake said nothing. He hadn't told them his name or rank. "We found your identification in your ship's computer," Captain Vexstar continued. "Morrison is an interesting name. We have records of another Morrison in your military, Admiral Carl Morrison of your Earth fleet." Jake kept his face blank, but inside he was worried. If they knew about his father, they might try to use Jake as leverage against him. "Family connections are weakness," the captain said. "The strong do not need others to make them powerful. This is why humans will always be inferior to Zephyrians." "If we're so inferior, why are you keeping me prisoner?" Jake asked. Captain Vexstar's mandibles clicked in anger. "You are a source of information, nothing more. When we have learned everything useful from your weak body, you will be disposed of." The captain turned to leave, then stopped. "Your people have been withdrawing from this sector. They abandon their colonies rather than fight for them. This proves what we have always known. Humans are cowards who run from real conflict." After the captain left, Jake thought about his words. Human colonies withdrawing could mean several things. Either the Zephyrians were winning and forcing evacuations, or Earth Command was clearing civilians out of the way before a major military operation. Jake hoped it was the second option. If Admiral Parker and the other fleet commanders were planning something big, they would want civilian populations safely out of the combat zone first. He began exercises to keep his body ready. Push-ups, sit-ups, stretching, anything he could do in the small cell. If rescue came, he needed to be prepared to move quickly. If it didn't come, he needed to be ready to make his own escape attempt. The guards had grown careless around him over the past week. They saw him as a broken prisoner who posed no threat. Jake had carefully built this image, appearing weaker each day while actually maintaining his strength. That evening, as the ship's lights dimmed for the night cycle, Jake heard something that made his heart race. It was faint, barely audible through the ship's hull, but unmistakable to someone with his training, the sound of ship engines. Multiple engines, getting closer. Jake pressed his ear against the cell wall and listened to the engines growing louder. His training had taught him to identify different types of spacecraft by their engine signatures. These sounded like human fusion drives, the deep, steady throb that came from Earth-built ships, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting excited might make him careless. The sounds could be something else entirely. Maybe the Zephyrians had captured human ships and were using them. Maybe his mind was playing tricks on him after weeks of imprisonment. The ship around him began to change course. Jake felt the subtle shift in artificial gravity that meant the pilot was adjusting direction. Emergency lighting came on in his cell, the red strips that activated when the ship went to combat alert. Footsteps ran past his door. Alien voices spoke rapidly in their clicking language. Jake caught words he recognized now: enemy, weapons, prepare. Whatever was happening, the Zephyrians were taking it seriously. Hours passed. Jake did mental exercises to stay focused. He reviewed everything he knew about the ship's layout, the guard schedules, and the locations of important systems. If rescue came, he needed to be ready to help rather than just wait to be saved. Dr. Keshlix arrived earlier than usual for his next session. She seemed agitated, clicking her mandibles nervously as she set up her equipment. "Your people are stubborn," she said without her usual greeting. "They refuse to negotiate reasonably." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Captain Vexstar offered to trade you for information about human military installations," the doctor explained. "Your leaders rejected the offer. They said they do not bargain with pirates." Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. That sounded exactly like something Admiral Parker would say. The old woman had never backed down from a fight in her entire career. "This proves that humans abandon their own when convenient," Dr. Keshlix continued. "Your command structure is weak and selfish. Or maybe they know something you don't," Jake suggested. The doctor paused in her preparations. What could they possibly know that would make them confident enough to refuse negotiation? Jake shrugged. "Maybe they're not as weak as you think." "Doctor." Keshlix made an angry clicking sound. "Impossible. We have studied your technology, your biology, your combat records. Humans are inferior in every measurable way." "Have you ever fought humans directly?" Jake asked. "Not just raids on civilian ships, but real military units?" The question seemed to disturb the doctor. She didn't answer immediately. "Combat effectiveness is determined by physical capability and technological advancement. In both areas, Zephyrians are superior." "That's not what I asked," Jake pressed. "Have you personally seen Zephyrian forces fight human military units?" "I am a scientist, not a warrior," Dr. Keshlix replied. But Jake noticed she was avoiding a direct answer. The interrogation session was shorter than usual. Dr. Keshlix seemed distracted by whatever was happening elsewhere on the ship. She left without conducting her usual medical scans, telling the guards to keep Jake under close watch. After she was gone, Jake heard more activity in the corridors. The engine sounds from outside had grown stronger. Multiple ships were definitely out there, and they were getting closer to the Zephyrian vessel. Chatty appeared at his cell door during the next guard change. The young alien looked nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder as he spoke. "Many ships come," he told Jake in his broken English. "Human ships, big ships. How many?" Jake asked casually. "More than fingers," Chatty replied, which Jake interpreted as more than 4. Zephyrians had 4 arms, so they probably counted in groups of 4 rather than 10 like humans. "Are they attacking?" Chatty shook his head. "Just watching." Waiting. Captain very angry. This was good news. Human ships were nearby, but they weren't starting a fight yet. That suggested they were trying to negotiate Jake's release rather than simply blast their way in. It also meant they were confident enough to face the Zephyrian fleet without firing the first shot. "Captain says humans are cowards," Chatty continued. "But cowards do not bring warships to enemy territory." "What do you think?" Jake asked. The young guard clicked thoughtfully. "I think maybe Captain is wrong about some things." That evening, Captain Vexstar visited Jake's cell again. The alien commander looked angry and frustrated. His shell markings seemed darker than before, and he moved with jerky, aggressive motions. "Your Admiral Parker is a fool," the captain announced. "She brings a small fleet against our entire task force. Does she think human ships can match Zephyrian technology?" Jake kept his expression neutral. "I wouldn't know. I'm just a scout pilot." "Her ships carry impressive weapons for such a primitive species," Captain Vexstar continued. "But weapons mean nothing without the will to use them. Humans always hesitate at the crucial moment. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe they're just picking their moment carefully. The captain stepped closer to Jake's prone form on the floor. There will be no rescue. Your admiral will talk and threaten, but she will not risk her ships for one prisoner. When she realizes this, she will leave, and you will remain our guest until you are no longer useful. If you're so sure about that, why do you look worried? Jake asked. Captain Vextar's mandibles snapped shut with an audible click. I am not worried about humans. I am annoyed by their persistence, but Jake could see the tension in the alien's posture. Captain Vextar was definitely concerned about something. The human fleet outside was apparently larger and better armed than the Zephyrians had expected. After the captain left, Jake allowed himself a small moment of hope. Help had arrived. Admiral Parker herself was out there, facing down an alien task force to get him back. The old woman had always said she never left people behind, and apparently she meant it, but rescue was far from certain. Jake was still locked in a cell on an enemy ship, surrounded by guards who wouldn't hesitate to kill him if ordered. The human fleet might be powerful, but they were outnumbered and operating in hostile territory. Jake began to plan for multiple scenarios. If rescue came, he needed to be ready to fight his way to a docking bay or escape pod. If negotiations failed and shooting started, he might be able to use the chaos to escape on his own. And if the worst happened and the human fleet was defeated, he would need to survive long enough for another rescue attempt. He exercised quietly in his cell, stretching muscles that had grown stiff from days of pretending to be weak. His body was actually in better condition than the aliens thought. The gray paste they fed him was nutritionally complete, even if it tasted awful, and the ship's atmosphere, while uncomfortable, hadn't weakened him as much as Dr. Keschlix believed. Late that night, Jake heard something new. The sound was muffled by the ship's hull, but his trained ear caught it, the distinctive hum of human communication equipment. Short-range, probably ship-to-ship transmissions between the fleet outside and the Zephyrian vessel. Admiral Parker was talking to Captain Vextar. Jake had to believe she was winning that conversation. The woman had been negotiating with hostile aliens since before Jake was born. If anyone could talk their way past Zephyrian arrogance, it was her, but Jake also knew that Admiral Parker would only negotiate so long before taking direct action. If the Zephyrians pushed too hard or refused reasonable terms, she would stop talking and start shooting. And when that happened, Jake needed to be ready to save himself. He lay down on the cold metal floor and tried to rest. Tomorrow might bring rescue, escape, or battle. Whatever came, Jake Morrison was going to be ready for it.